Buonasera a tutti, scusate per il ritardo, ma abbiamo avuto dei piccoli problemi di connessione. Stasera abbiamo l'opportunità di parlare, secondo me, con un musicista dell'epoca prog, nonché fratello minore di Steve Hackett, quindi stasera c'è John Hackett con noi. Come sempre io vi auguro una buona visione, caricherò subito dopo la diretta i sottotitoli che per chi magari ha bisogno di seguire ciò che diciamo è la cosa migliore. Penso che per il Film Music Channel sia il coronamento di un qualcosa di interessante, però ecco, per me è veramente un onore se non fanno anche dei generis. Quindi vi auguro una buona diretta, un buon ascolto e una buona visione. Grazie a tutti, come sempre. John, hi!
Hi there. Hi, Matteo. Hi, everybody.
And how are you, John?
Oh, thank you. Very well. Nice to be with you. Sorry for uh, the technical problem.
We have a technical problem. I think that.
And
I think that. It is better to use. John, it is better that use the smartphone. Sorry, but the image
internet
is.
problem.
It is. Yes.
Okay, can you hear me,
Problem.
Matteo? Okay.
Yes, I can hear you, but with so much delay. Scusate un attimino, adesso attendiamo, c'è questo piccolo problema tecnico e ritorneremo subito. Un attimo di attesa perché si vede che ha problemi con la connessione, quindi adesso si connetterà con lo smartphone. Attendete un attimo, scusate, ecco, per il problema tecnico. Okay, John, can you hear me good?
I can. Everything's fine now. Yeah.
It is fine now.
So
we can do
I don't know what to suggest. I mean, we could possibly change to another computer upstairs, but we may be very delayed
no
if we do
problem.
that. So.
John, we are live and there is problem and there is no problem. So thank you for your time. Thank you for your time and your kindness. I want to ask you, John, your new project. Can you talk about your new project? And later we can talk about your past.
Sure. Well, at the moment, I'm working on a new album with my band, the John Hackett Band, and we've been working on it for some time, but it's nearly finished now. So I've been this weekend doing some of the first mixes for that, and it's an album that with my band there are four of us. I should explain. We have bass, drums, guitar, and myself. So and everybody in the band is a very strong writer. That's the nice thing. That's the thing that excites me about working with the guys that I work with. So although the band has my name, it's my band, as it were, but everybody usually contributes to the the creative side of what we do. For example, we're doing a song called Red Institution written by our bass player who shares the lead vocals with me, Jeremy Richardson, and that's a song about religious intolerance. The drummer, Duncan Parsons, also a very strong writer. There's a piece by him called The Committee, which is it's quite contrapuntal in the middle, if you know what I mean. That we have different strands of melody coming in at different points. So it's quite tricky to play, but very very exciting and an interesting piece. And there are some pieces of mine, of course. There's one called Brotherhood, which I wrote at the invasion of Ukraine. So it was a song really thinking not just about the situation in Ukraine, but also in war generally, and how it can form a bond with people when they're in very difficult situations, fighting or whatever. And there's another piece called Country Gentleman, which I wrote. Are you hearing me okay, Matteo?
Yes, yes, yes. I will listen to you.
You are. Good. Okay. So and there's a piece called Country Gentleman, which I actually wrote when my father-in-law, my wife's father, when he died. We went to his house, and the family were together downstairs, and I went upstairs to leave them to to grieve. And I picked up a guitar, and I wrote this quite a simple melody in it, and it has almost like a folk-like quality. And that's a piece that will be going on the album, and it's almost a bit like Vaughan Williams at times. If you know, there's an English composer,
Yes.
Vaughan Williams, who
Yes.
wrote some wonderful symphonies.
A great
and,
composer.
Yes. So it starts with some an orchestral passage with lots of strings, and then drums, guitar, and goes towards more to it. So that's the project at the moment, is to finish, and then we have some gigs, some concerts coming up with my band, the John Hackett Band. So we'll be over in Kidderminster, and then these are dates in the UK. So throughout at some points in June, usually at the weekends, we tend to gig at the weekends. We have some gigs coming up, and then I will be future projects, things coming up. There's my brother's playing at the Albert Hall, which is a very large concert hall that some people may know in London. So he's invited me to play with him on October 23rd, and then there's a few gigs with a band called the Book of Genesis, one of the many good Genesis tribute bands which there are, and I'll be doing a few gigs with them in November. So it's quite a varied mixture of things that I do.
You're a busy man, John.
Yeah. I mean, I like to do different things. You see, I mean, the thing is that I had a classical training on the flute, so the flute has always been my main thing.
Yes.
But in more recent years, I've tried to develop also my writing, and I've gone back to doing some of the rock things that I did, because of course I worked with my brother in the early days, just after he'd left Genesis. So I'm very lucky in that I'm able to do a mixture of things. I also have a duo with a pianist, a friend of mine, Matt Lum, and which is a kind of a continuation of work that I've done with other people, like this Marco Lamuscio in Italy. We've done a lot of
it is an important musician, classical musician
together. Yeah.
And I want to ask you, John, as you said, you are lucky because when you was 20 years old, you played for the first time in your brother's album, Voyage of Acolyte. You was at 20 years old. Okay.
Yes. I mean, it's extraordinary, really, now to think next year it will be 50 years since since we recorded that album. And yeah, I mean, that was
I think that, John, it was a huge success because you was very young and your brother was the guitarist of Genesis, and I think that Voyage of Acolyte, it is the better one. I don't want to say that Spectral Morning or Please Don't Touch is not good, but for me, when I was 12 years old, when I listened the first time from my father, Shadow of Hierophant for me was a shock. Was a shock because
Sure.
I was a little kid, and how many little kids about 12 years old, 14 years old listen to this album. For me, it is very, very important for my preparation in music. In drumming, it is my trap, and I think about the next thing was for you a very important step. Can you recall, John, the sessions of this album? Because I know that that album was recorded and at night, because in the afternoon there was so many planes outside, and you can't record.
Well,
It is right.
yes, you're right. We did record it. It was actually, it was called Aviation House. I'm not sure there were planes outside, but it was called, I think it was called Aviation House, the building, and the recording studio was downstairs in the basement. And from time to time, we had to stop because you could hear the underground train, which in London we call the tube, but you could
Tube.
sometimes hear the trains going through. But because there were offices above, it meant that because of the noise from the music that
Yes.
we recorded at night, so they were very exciting sessions. For me, it was an amazing experience because the only other experience I'd had of being in a recording studio before that was with Quiet World, which was the first band that my brother was
Of
with.
Steve,
Yeah,
1970.
and so that was, yeah, so that was going back some time. Um, and we did a lot of preparation for those recording sessions, because I remember Steve was actually living back at home at the time, which was nice. So we were able to prepare things together. And I bought a tape recorder, a reel to reel, and it had a
Revox.
facility. Yeah, it wasn't as good as a Revox. It was a Tandberg actually.
A Hamburger.
But it had what's called sound on sound, which in those days was it's like, you know, the most amazing thing, because you could record yourself and then play something on the top, and then
Yes.
maybe something else as well. The quality would, as you put more tracks one on top of the other, would not be so good. But it did mean that you could experiment with harmonies, and you could make quite good just demos, you know, just to work with. So a lot of the material we tried, you know, I was able to experiment with like harmony flute parts, harmony guitar parts, for example, at the end of Ace of Wands, things like that. So it made me prepared for most of the sessions, not all of them. And it also meant that I was able to help Steve with some of the writing of the parts, because
Okay.
I mean, one of the differences between me and my brother is that Steve is a fantastic musician, a very natural musician.
A good
I
one.
am the one that's got a more sort of academic route, and I'm the one that had lessons at school and then at university in reading and writing music. So, for example, I wrote out the cello parts for that
Yes.
album, for things like Tower Struck Down,
Wow.
and also
Wow.
some of the you know, the oboe parts, the cor anglais. We had the wonderful Robin Miller came to those
Robbie Miller.
sessions to
Yes.
play.
He was
Yeah,
an oboist for the King Crimson,
that's right. That's right.
like Mark Cherrig, the trumpeter.
Yeah, and so we'd heard Robin Miller play, and for me it was very exciting because I was really getting very enthusiastic about studying classical flute playing, and Robin Miller came down. He'd been playing with the BBC Symphony Orchestra, and they'd just done a session with Pierre Boulez,
Wow.
he was explaining how he would conduct with his hands, and he had the most amazing ear. He could hear everything, and he actually showed me the score, the oboe parts that he was working from. It looked so difficult, and he was very very nice to work with. So I'd written out oboe part for him, and also the cor anglais parts. And in fact, I made a mistake. I wrote it out in the wrong key, but because the cor anglais is a transposing instrument, and I'd not done it before. So anyway, he was very nice about it, and but it did help those sessions along. And then, of course, we had Phil Collins
Of
came
course.
down to do the drums, and
Mike
Mike
Radford.
Rutherford,
Mike
and
Rutherford.
yeah, I mean, for me, it
Percy
was an
Jones.
incredible
Percy
yes, and
Jones.
yeah, absolutely, yeah.
John
Uh,
Alcock. John
and John
Aycock.
Aycock was producing. Yes, he was there producing. So and of course Sally Oldfield came to sing
Sally
on
Oldfield.
Shadow of the Hierophant. So for me, as a 20-year-old, I just at that time made a decision that I wanted to be a musician. Before that, I'd been studying languages, and I decided I wanted to be a musician. So it was a really great time because just to spend a few weeks in a professional recording studio and see how everything worked, and yeah, and in fact the very first day that we were in the studio, we recorded Hands of the Priestess.
And
So
yes.
Hands of the Priestess, which is a big a big flute melody. So and that went
A
really really
wonderful
well.
melody.
So
A wonderful
so
melody. Because Voyage of Acolyte, it is a mixture of symphonic, because in 1975 there's no the prog meaning. It was symphonic, and it is a mixture of symphonic, jazz, and classical genre. I think that
mm,
Voyage, it is the step of your brother to leave the Genesis, because I think that Steve was very was very not fit inside Genesis about 1975, 1976, when they record A Trick of the Tail and One Warfaring. And I think that Voyage of Acolyte was the first step for Steve to explore with your help. I think that, because if I think about Tower of Struck Down, it is a great track with a powerful bass and a great drums, and of Priestess with your work of flute. I think that
mm.
for your brother and for you, it was a good one, a good shot.
yes,
And
yes. Well,
latest,
that's what I.
yes,
Sorry.
yes, sorry, no, no, no,
I
go,
just say
no, no,
it's
go
what I've
on.
always loved about that album is the combination of the classical influence, the classical instruments with rock. So I think it's an unusual album in that respect, and certainly
Yes,
for
it
me
was very different.
it's exciting.
It was very different, John, from the other one. Solo albums of members of prog album. I think that about Chris Squire, the bass of Yes, his first
Mm,
album, Fish Out of Water. It is very different from Voyage of Acolyte. I think that
mm.
Voyage of Acolyte was different from the others. And I think that John, your flute work in the later album, I think that Please Don't Touch, in my opinion, the best one of the later days of the 70s, Spectral Mornings. Do you like Spectral Mornings? What is your favorite album of your brother?
That's a difficult question. That is a difficult question, but I do like Spectral Mornings very much, and it has very good memories for me because we had. Excuse me, I've got a cat situation here. The cat's come in and wants to be
Yes,
part
I
of the
have
interview.
my cat
So
like I have the cat. I have the
she'll
same
be okay in a
problem.
minute, I think.
Yes,
She'll
I
be
have
okay
the
in a
same
minute.
problem. I have the same
um,
problem.
I forgot my say. Oh yes, spectral warnings. Yes, it was. I know. Yes, what I was going to say was that we'd because Steve had by that time he'd left Genesis and formed his own band, which I
Like a
was,
band.
you know,
Okay.
was very fortunate to be part of. With you know, we had Dick Cadbury on bass guitar and vocals, Pete Hicks played vocals, Nick Magnus, fantastic keyboard player, and
And the
John Shearer
drummer,
on drums.
uh,
The drummer was John Shearer.
John Shearer,
John Shearer, yeah,
the,
yeah.
the biggest
But so
one, the
he had a
biggest drum kit,
yeah,
Ludwig's
yeah. He
drum
was
kit.
quite a showman, but an excellent drummer. And you
Yes,
know, we'd gone off on tour in 1978. It was because I'd just left university at that time and gone off. The first gig was in Oslo. It was incredibly exciting to be. I'd never played with a rock band before, so to be on stage and go straight in at that level was absolutely incredible. And I think looking back on it, I probably took it rather for granted at the time. If you know the expression for granted, I just accepted it. Oh yeah, it's my brother. Yes, it'll be fine, you know. But I look back now and I think what a fantastic opportunity it was, because you know we did some big concerts, we played to a lot of people, and it was a lot of fun. It was but the point was that I think the band very quickly became very tight. Actually, you have to be careful in English because tight can also mean drunk.
tight, to- tight
Tight
like
can mean it can mean very close,
tight,
very rhythmically close,
very
but it can
yes,
also mean
very
drunk.
close.
Anyway, I meant very rhythmically very close, and maybe sometimes a bit tight, but. So I think we were a very good band, and I'm very proud when I listen back to live concerts that we did back then. So what I'm saying is, by the time we did Spectral Mornings, the band were a real unit, and everyone worked very well together. The vocals were terrific because Pete Hicks and Dick Cadbury
Critics,
and Steve, you know, they worked very well working on vocal harmonies. So, for example, the track called Virgin and the Gypsy, there are some
Virgin
beautiful
my favorite
harmonies
one,
on
my
there,
favorite
you
one
know.
of Spectral Mornings, it is um, the flowers of Tai Chi blossom everywhere.
Oh,
I like so
yes,
much
Flower of Tai Chi, yes.
because I am a drummer, but I like
Mm,
the so much synthesizer, and
yeah.
and my favorite one was the mellotron. And inside this track, the flowers of Tai Chi, there is
Mm.
an oriental mellotron. Na 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 na. Che c'è
Yeah, it's a very oriental sounding melody,
and the
isn't it?
ballad
Yeah,
of
yeah,
the decomposing man. The ballad,
yeah,
like sentimental institution, where there were songs are not a silly songs, are very nice songs with a great sense of British humor.
oh, absolutely, yes. I just keep my nose
And
clean. Egg chips and beans. It's not very Italian, egg chips and beans, but
actually,
yeah,
I like it so much.
very English. Yeah,
Full English because when I was in
yeah,
England, the
yeah,
English breakfast, the right name it is full English with
yeah,
sausages,
yeah,
mushrooms, tomatoes,
yeah,
and
yeah.
it is the your brother and you. Inside these albums, there is a lot of sense of humor because if I think that in Defector, the Steps, Vampire as a guest,
Oh
there
yes,
was a
yeah,
great tracks.
yeah, yeah.
Like,
Well, that Steve
and
wrote all
later,
that, of course. So yeah.
yes, Steve for me is an idol. I am a huge Genesis fan. I am a
Hmm.
huge Genesis fan, and when I was 10 years, now I am 39, 29 years of a huge fan because my father was a huge fan of the first
Really, yeah.
Genesis. Yes. because Genesis came in Italy so many times, in my city, in Brescia, like Gentle Giant, like King Crimson. Genesis came like Vandergraaf Generator, under Charisma Records, and in Italy, Genesis, it is an important band. So I am a huge fan of Genesis, but when your brother left Genesis, the music changed, and I think that your brother do the right thing, because I think that in the 80s, another my favorite, Cured, it is an intelligent and a smart album without a drummer, with a lead drum, and I think that Cured was for your brother and for you a new step, because Steve entered in the 80s with a pop album, not a prog.
Yeah, it was more pop sounding, certainly. Yes. I wasn't so involved in that album as I was much more involved in, Voyage of the Acolyte, Please Don't Touch, and Spectral Mornings. But with Cured, he was working much more closely then because he was using yeah, exactly. Yes, that's right. Yeah.
And John, now with the John Hackett band, as you said before, you have so many live, but I can see you, the computer at your shoulder. Are you composing? Are you composing now?
It's a very good question. I'm not composing just at the moment, but I'm about to. I'm one of these people. I don't write all the time. I think Steve, for example, he tends to write at every opportunity in hotel rooms, and whenever he has a spare moment, which isn't very often, I think, the way he works so hard. But he tends to be always being creative writing. With me, I tend to just write. I might have a few weeks or a few months when I'm writing, and then I stop. And I'm now at a period where I haven't actually written anything new this year, I don't think. So it really does feel time. So no, I mean the reason for the computer is just to do mixing. As I say, I'm doing some mixing and working on recording on the new the John Hackett Band album. But I do feel that the time is right to be creative, and that's the great thing about working in progressive music, that you can be creative, and
you have to be creative. If you want to play symphonic music, you have to be creative. It's not like punk rock, 3 chords, and you have a song. In progressive music, you have to use your brain. John, I want to ask you one of my curiosity. How do you feel when you was young? How do you feel to be the little brother of Steve Hackett, the guitarist of Genesis? How can you explain your feelings? Now you are an adult, but when you was a kid, no, not old, no, John, older. But when you was very young, 19, 20 years old, how do you feel about your brother? You was at the university, you became John Hackett, the brother of Steve Hackett, the guitarist of Genesis. How can you handle this?
Well, it's not a problem at all, because Steve has always been very kind to me.
Very natural man. I can confirm.
He always included me in everything. I mean, my mother, who is still with us. I mean, she's 94, but
94 is old.
Yeah, but she loves Miss. Well, she's actually remarried, because her parents divorced. She's Mrs. Leaney now, actually. But June anyway. She loves to tell the story of how when I was about 2 years old, and Steve was sitting round with his friends in a circle, and I went into the room, and I sort of threw myself into the middle of Steve and his friends. And instead of pushing me out of the way, Steve sort of caught me and allowed me to join his group of friends. And so he's always allowed me to join in and encouraged me to join in. So he actually gave me my first guitar lesson when I was 12. I started out as a guitarist, and so he showed me how to play the guitar. And when he joined his first proper recording band, which was Quiet World, they used to come to our little flat in Victoria. It was just a small 2-bedroom flat, and they would sit in the bedroom and rehearse the songs. They'd be singing, working out harmonies, working on guitar parts, and I was allowed to sit in there with them and join in. So which was very nice, because
it was very
so
natural.
I was part of that, and so we always talked about music together. We worked a lot on playing together when we were teenagers. We used to play blues guitar together. We'd both be playing and strumming around and working on lead parts. And in fact, when it came to when he joined Genesis, that was when Peter Gabriel and Tony Banks came to that same flat, to our bedroom there, and I was allowed to stay for that. And in fact, we played some flute and guitar together, and that was kind of part of his audition, if you call it that. It wasn't an audition in a very strict formal sense. But obviously they were interested to see what he could do. So he included me in that, and then in later years, obviously when he formed his own band, he was kind enough to invite me to be part of that, because we'd worked on Voyage of the Acolyte together and Please Don't Touch. So it's only ever been a complete blessing and a plus for me, because if I look back on my life, I think, well, if Steve hadn't been my brother, and if he hadn't been in Genesis, I probably wouldn't have done what I did with my life, or in quite the same way. Maybe I would have just ended up, maybe I would have been a musician, I don't know. Maybe I would have
a musical
been a teacher of music. I spent many years teaching the flutes, but all the traveling that I was able to do, especially when I was younger, and we used to do tours of America, and and since then, we've been around. Obviously, we've been around Europe many times. I've been to Japan, so it's just a blessing, really. And I'm incredibly proud of what he's done, and I have the greatest admiration for him.
You can say it because your brother. For me, I don't want to be different from the other ones. But for me, your brother, it is a great musician, and first of all, like you, a great human. Because every time that I write an email to him, Steve always reply to me and say, "But don't worry, when I have time, we can do it like you streaming." And for me, it will be a pleasure. But as the same thing with you, is not different, because my channel, it is a quality channel, a cult channel, because I don't have so many followers. I don't want it. But for me, it is a pleasure to interview the brother of Steve Hackett, because first of all, I am a Genesis fan. I grew up with your music, because in any kind of music, the only Genesis member, the only complete discography was by your brother. The other ones, not like so much. From your brother, I have from Voyage to Acolyte to the late one. Stop.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. Because for me, it is very important. And Genesis music and Steve Hackett music, it was an important part of my life. I am married. I have 2 children, and the music of John Hackett and Steve Hackett, for me, it is very important. I can say to you, I don't want to be so romantic, but certain songs like Spectral Mornings for me is an important song, because it was a song when I said to my wife to be married. Spectral Mornings was the soundtrack was the soundtracks of my wedding proposal. Wedding
I
proposal.
see. The soundtrack, I see. Oh, that's a nice story. That's good.
Nice
That's
story.
really good to know. Yeah.
And thank you for your time. I want to ask you the last thing. With John Hackett Band, can you come to Italy or not?
Oh well, it would be lovely to come, but there are practical considerations, unfortunately, that
Okay.
with Brexit and all that nonsense, it's caused so many
It is
difficulties,
difficult.
and yeah, it's a shame, because we do have. I mean, our lead guitarist Nick Fletcher is a fantastic guitarist. I mean, I've been so lucky that I've had a lifetime of working with my brother. I've also occasionally worked with Anthony Phillips, and
Anthony Phillips.
and now having Nick Fletcher in the John Hackett Band is a great pleasure, because he's such a talented guitarist. And I know my brother rates him as well, says how good he is. So we would love to come one day. I won't say never, but it will be super. We'd love to come, but there are practical considerations of
Never say
getting
never,
everybody
John.
there.
Never
Never
say
say
never.
never. That's the expression.
And I hope that will be a dream for me. John, thank you for your time. Thank you for your wife, a great person, to arrange this live. And thank you
Yeah.
for everything and for your music. It is
Well,
very
thank you so
important.
much. It's been a great pleasure talking to you, Matteo, and I apologize again if the technical
There's
problems
no problem.
were
You
this
don't
end,
have to, John,
but
you don't have
luckily
to apologize.
Catherine sorted it, so okay,
No,
that's great.
you don't have to apologize. I will send you the link of this streaming, and if you want,
Yeah.
John, subscribe
Yeah.
to my YouTube channel. Okay?
Yeah, okay, I'll do it. Yeah, okay, that's super.
Thank you for your time.
Okay,
Bye, John.
ciao.
Ciao, grazie a tutti. Ci vediamo alla prossima. Bye bye, John. Thank you.
Bye bye.